Maybe I'm a manager that if you give them time, the story always ends the same. At all my previous clubs, it ends the same with me and a trophy.
Well, that was Ange Postecoglou yesterday at his press conference. It looked like a man under pressure. We've got that plus so many others on this episode of Hotsport. So stay tuned right after this quick intro. Hello, everybody, and welcome along back to Hotsport. Make sure you are hitting the like button. Make sure you are subscribing. We've got some great content for you here on the eve of the Premier League returning. It's the return of our Under Pressure segment. So, guys, get excited. Again, make sure you're hitting the like button on this video. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you know when we are uploading, when we're going live on some of these videos. And, of course, follow us on socials. All of our social information is at the bottom of the screen over here. And then also to the right of me is you can click the QR code and you can subscribe. It will take you to the page for Fire Them Cannons, the podcast that I'm doing with Cal, my fellow Gooner. And so that's kind of all the business we have to talk about you today. But let's not waste any time, guys. It's time now for Under Pressure. Well, it's my favorite time of the week. It's time for the Under Pressure segment, guys. And, well, I think it comes to nobody's surprise. Obviously, if you've seen what I said this morning, what I had in the opening intro, that the manager under pressure this week is none other than Nottingham Forest's own Ange Postecoglou. Now, the pressure is really piled on a man who, let's be honest, at the last international break was about to start his journey as the manager of Nottingham Forest. So we had just started, we were hosting Arsenal, obviously. I mean, they were playing against Arsenal. After they had just shockingly sacked Nuno Espirito Santo at the time, they made the crazy switch to bring Ange Postecoglou over to Nottingham Forest. And this is the second week in a row now we're going to feature Ange. And before he was alongside Ruben, and today it is all about Ange. He is the manager who is the most under pressure in the league, and it's really ramped up in recent times. Let's bring you to this. This is what I saw this on Instagram. This is from Hotsport. And their post says, Ange Postecoglou is at risk of an immediate sacking if Nottingham Forest lose to Chelsea this weekend. Forest used the October international break to sound out potential replacements, which include Sean Dyche, Marco Silva, Maurizio Pochettino, and Brendan Rodgers. Now, of course, for those of you who do not know, I believe that two of those managers already are employed. So Poch obviously is employed at USA, the US national team, and Marco Silva, of course, is still in the job at Fulham. So maybe that's a different thing we need to talk about, which is Marco Silva being under pressure. But I don't think so. I think that he's got a lot of support there at Fulham. But we're not talking about Marco Silva. We're talking about Ange. Now, my opinion, just to bring this back here, my opinion on Ange to begin with, and we'll obviously further this discussion. We've got some more clips again to show you of the press conference, but my opinion is I just think that it's very, very premature to be putting that type of pressure. Like, they already were doing research in last international break to bring in him. So now every international break, are we going to be switching the manager after four or five match weeks? I think it's insane, especially to use Chelsea as the barometer here. Like, I've said what I've said about Chelsea, but from the point of view of Nottingham Forest, like, Chelsea is a team that, let's be honest, is more than likely going to win or take points from this game. So if to say that this is the game that you're going to base Ange's job off of, hope isn't true. Because look, I think Ange has brought a lot of, valid points to his press conference, which is like, when people judged him at Spurs, it's almost as if they took away that first 10-game stretch when they were top of the league. And now it's like as if now in his new job, that first 10-game stretch is so important that it might cost him his job. Like, switching managers in the middle of the season, I just want to take this into reality. Regardless of what you think about, his performance so far in the season, you have to realize there are a few things that come into play here. Firstly, Nottingham Forest made this decision. They should have known that they've made a drastic change in terms of styles from one pragmatic manager to an attacking manager. So, talk about a dude who hasn't even been able to have a transfer window, and we're already talking about him. This is the match he needs to win, to not lose, or he's going to get sacked. I'm all for under pressure. And of course, this under pressure segment might be a little bit different to many, because maybe you'll find me defending in some respects. Because look, I have to kind of share my own opinion. He is under pressure. I think we have no doubt about that. I think it's very obvious, But the second part to this is exactly what he said, which is, so you've done that research, and understand the ramifications of what that drastic switch is. Now you're not giving him enough time to be able to settle, to change the mentality of the team, to be able to stabilize the ship. Now, of course, the ship has been going down with him, and that I've mentioned that yesterday when I was talking about it on the tiers. That they've look at the record that Nottingham Forest have had since Ange Postecoglou has brought him in. Now let me take a look at that quickly to see all the results. Since he's come in. So let's go back. This is Nottingham Forest since Ange. Why can't I bring this screen all the way up? Nottingham Forest, maybe instead of schedule, say results. Here we go. All right, so this has been since Ange Postecoglou has taken over the club. Why is this so bad? Basically, we'll go back to when they came back. They played Arsenal. They lost. Then they lost to Swansea in the cup, so they got knocked out of the cup. They got a draw away at Burnley, which I think for Forest is a bad result. They drew against Betis in the Europa League. They lost to Sunderland at home. Okay, so that's a promotion side. Then they lost to Midtjylland as well in the Europa League. And then they also obviously suffered defeat to Newcastle. So they've had one draw in the Premier League, which was away at Burnley, and one draw away at the Europa League. The rest are defeats. So yes, it doesn't read well for him. And so maybe he's done such a poor job that they feel like maybe we made the wrong choice. But again, that's on them, in my opinion. I think at some point you need to kind of just, if you've gone with Ange, there must have been a reason why you went with Ange in the first place. And after a month, you've now changed your mind. This is like, firing a new employee. There are many ways to look at it, because at the same time, you can say, maybe it just hasn't worked out. Maybe it wasn't a good fit. But again, that's on that club. That's on the club. And I think Ange brings up some really good points. And I'm just going to obviously show you the main one here, which is what he talks about. And I could show you almost the entire press conference. It's like the clip that I got, which is 6 minutes. But this is the main one. And obviously, we brought it up at the start. Wait. We brought it up at the start here. Here we go. This is what Ange had to say, like the main clip that obviously that went around the internet this morning about what Ange had to say.
But all I've heard since I've finished at Tottenham is that we finished 17th last year. So if you look at it through that prism of we finished 17th, then yeah, I'm a failed manager who was lucky to get another opportunity. But again, if I have to explain why we finished 17th, really, some basic, it doesn't have to be too in-depth. Just have a look at the last 5 or 6 team sheets of us in the league last year and see what I prioritised, who was on the bench, who was playing. The last game against Brighton, the players were out partying for 2 days, which I sanctioned because I felt they deserved to. So yes, we finished 17th. If people think that's a reflection of me and my coaching, then again, I think they're looking at it through the prism of I just don't fit. So we get to the current space where there's a different story to tell, that maybe I'm not a failed manager who was lucky to get this job, but maybe I'm a manager that if you give them time, the story always ends the same. At all my previous clubs, it ends the same with me and a trophy. So,
look, I mean, that's a very bold statement, but again, it's a statement by a man who does have a record. He's right. He's right in a certain respect. And look, you're listening, of course, into a fan of Arsenal, so obviously, you know, Ange Postecoglou was the manager of Spurs, and I said in many occasions, like I didn't like. That's because we're talking about the debate of who had a better season, Arsenal or Spurs. At the end of the day, Ange brings up a point. Now, of course, we're talking about, you know, his Tottenham reign. But what he's trying to tell you all is basically what I've just said, which is you need to be able to give this manager time. He's barely had any time at all. He doesn't know these players. He came in the middle of the season. He's not had any preseason training. The system is basically they went from a very different tactics in the middle of the season. Like it's a shock again for a lot of these guys. It's like some of these guys have been bought in the summer with the expectation of playing for Nuno, and now they're playing for Ange. So like the signings that they've made, Edu made over the summer, don't even correlate necessarily to the manager. So now what you have to do now, that's just the Manchester United problem, which I mentioned on the Top 6 show, which is like when you sack players, when you sack managers in the middle of the season, you've just had players that you've bought for that manager. All of a sudden, the new manager comes in, you might not like those same players, and all of a sudden, you're starting to shove players onto the bench or kind of out of the plans of the team. And of course, you're paying those players that don't fit the manager's scheme, and it creates this sort of problem here. So, what really, I actually kind of agree with Ange. I agree he needs more time to be able to prove himself. And look, he's right. He won trophies with Celtic. He won a trophy with Tottenham. Like Tottenham wouldn't won a trophy in so many years. He said that. And let's see how things go. Like Nottingham Forest are in the Europa League. They actually happen to have the manager who won the Europa League. Now their results in the Europa League under him have not been that great. But look, you have to give him time to turn it around. 1 month again, especially regardless of this or what. Like let's take a look at their schedule again moving forward, right? Because I think there are other games which I'm like, first of all, the Burnley game and the Sunderland game are more ones we can be critical for. Losing to Newcastle away, I don't think you can criticize him for. Right? Bournemouth, okay, and then you get Bournemouth, Man United. Oh my God, the fixtures are not easy. You got Chelsea, then Porto, Bournemouth, Man United. Okay, Sturm Graz, Leeds. Is that all the way? When's into the next international break? Leeds, Liverpool. Oh my God. Malmo, Brighton. Wait, but that before Liverpool. Okay. Here's the thing. Let's see, because again, most of these fixtures are pretty, and I'll share this tab too. Most of these fixtures here, we're looking at Chelsea, Porto, Bournemouth, United, Sturm Graz, Leeds. Give him until the Leeds game. See the collection of everything. Does it improve? It's not always results. It's the performance of the team. How do they perform against Chelsea? How do they perform against Man United? How do they perform against away at Bournemouth? Bournemouth has become a team that's now pushing for Europe. By the way, comparable, because Nottingham Forest was doing last year what Bournemouth is doing this year. So that's, again, a game that I can judge Angel a bit more on. Leeds United at home. And then, of course, you got Europa League games in there. Let's give him another month at least, or to the next break at least. But you've just come off the break. Okay, I get you made some of these research and some of these managers. But what's going to happen next? So you beat Chelsea, he's safe. Or you don't lose to Chelsea, he's safe. Then what happens if you lose to Porto? Like, to change manager twice in the season, I think, is a dangerous game to play. Now, the argument you could say is, look, we just don't like this manager. We want to switch to a different style, back to the pragmatist. I think Dyche is the name that's been thrown around the most. Maybe he suits more the players that they have now. That's a fair thing to say. But like, look, maybe we don't want to go down this route, and maybe that's just something that they've decided. So I say all that to say this. Of course he's under pressure. There's way too much evidence, way too much out there in the media. He's clearly stating in his press conference that he's the man under pressure. He's defending his position. And there was so much more, by the way, spoken about in this press conference. We can stay on this subject for days, for hours. But yeah, he's under pressure, Ange. And I hope for his sake that being on this list, that they can get a result against Chelsea at home, that they put in a resilient performance, that these players play for the manager. Because at the end of the day, that's the biggest barometer for me for managers' jobs is, how do the players feel about you? Do you have the faith of the locker room? That's the number one thing for me. Like, when you ever met, like, their biggest issue to begin with is that they got rid of a coach that the players believed in and trusted and liked. That's the problem to begin with. So any of these times, like, we can go into all these manager debates, and we'll obviously be doing it on this segment every single week. But that's the biggest key for me. Hey, like, where are they in terms of your expectations? But do the players love playing for him? Because if we're creating a toxic environment, for me, that's when the boss has got to go. Because you sometimes have to realize the expectations need to be still a little bit more realistic. Now, for Forest, of course, they're traveling down the table. You saw I had them on my bottom of the tiers. That's fair. So again, so many ways to look at this. You can say, look, it's fair enough if they want to sack him. Maybe it's a bit harsh. I've given you sort of all the angles here. But we move on. Again, we will be talking about, and again, these two players. And again, another one who's been here all the time, but he's wearing a different shirt on here. And I've got a little bit of the international games coming in and eking its way into Premier League narratives. And you notice the other striker I have in there is my striker, Viktor Gyökeres, who I have come to his defense. I still believe that I think he's actually been pretty good at Arsenal. And I've got some evidence from my manager, Mikel Arteta, that kind of outlines my beliefs of Viktor Gyökeres and what I've seen, and just keeping things real. But now that the reason I brought him up at the same time as Isak is because look, let's talk about Sweden. Let's do this. This is the underlying thing, right? So during their international matches, they played Switzerland, they played Kosovo. I believe they lost to Switzerland, 2-0, and they lost to Kosovo 1-0. With two of the best strikers in the world in the same lineup, they were not able to score. Like, Switzerland's one thing. Switzerland's a pretty decent international team. Kosovo is a whole other story. And by the way, they lost to Kosovo, I believe, in the last month as well. So, by the way, correct me. I don't know if nearly know if that's correct. But here's the point. These are two players who were bought for a lot of money this summer and a lot of expectations and have similar narratives. So for a lot of people saying that, the defense on Isak hasn't had a preseason. The defense on Gyökeres for a long time was, he hasn't had a preseason, although I feel like he did a little bit because he played about 10 minutes against Spurs, but you get to play in the Emirates Cup. But I think he's sort of kind of gotten his feet under, and I think he's contributing to the team in other ways other than goals. Which is kind of what Arteta was saying. But the reason I brought these up to you at the same time is because on one hand, I've used the Isak thing, and I've been the one guy really who's had constant pressure on Isak. This is 5 weeks in a row with him on the under pressure list. It's like the Isak segment. And yeah, I'm about to go in on him. But firstly, I just got to talk about the inconsistencies I have here, because the reason why I've gone after Isak is because I'm using the same energy that people use on Gyökeres. So, but on that same breath, I do need to, give Isak the same defenses that I give Gyökeres. So let's hear from their managers each on the topic. First, Arne Slot was asked about it. He was asked about it at his press conference about Alexander Isak. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
And Alexander Isak played twice for Sweden, 4 games over the international break. I just wonder how you see his fitness progressing, as I know you've been keen to sort of build him up steadily, given his lack of pre-season and everything that's gone on.
Yeah, I think that's what we did. And I think now he's had his 5-6 weeks of pre-season, which is normal for every player, especially if you've been out for 3 or 4 months. So fitness-wise, I think he's now close to the level he should be. And now I think we can judge him in the best, in a fair way from now on. So I know how this industry works. If he plays there twice and doesn't score, then that's not what you're hoping for. Of course, you're hoping if they go to the national team that they score goals, like Cody did, like Virgil did, like Dominic did, and like McAllister did. Do I forget a few? Probably. But he didn't. But I think his pre-season maybe finished. Now he's played a few games, 70, 80, 90 minutes. So let's see where he is in the upcoming weeks.
Well, you heard it not from me, but from Arne Slot. Excuse-making time for Alexander Isak is over. That pre-season excuse, Liverpool fans, has now been removed by your one and only manager, Arne Slot. That's right. So what that's telling me is Alexander Isak better not be on this list next week. That's what it's telling me, because the excuse making is over. Can't score for Liverpool, can't score for Sweden. Where are we at here, bro? You are the transfer record. Again, this is me getting harsh on him. That's the difference between Gyökeres and Isak, by the way. Isak cost about double Gyökeres. Gyökeres around in the 65 million area, and Isak went for 130. So, like, that's just sort of like the way I feel. Like, okay, you've had your preseason, and I guess I'm the one person who during his preseason have had him under pressure from the get-go, because I felt that he didn't have a preseason out of his own doing. He didn't need to leave Newcastle. He didn't need to go on strike. Newcastle's stance was very, very clear. We are not selling Alexander Isak, especially not with us being in the Champions League. It's been that way before the beginning of the summer. Liverpool, for me, were very disrespectful in knocking on the door, and even though everyone told them he is not for sale, and creating issues with Newcastle, giving Alexander Isak this dream of potentially moving to Liverpool. And then after Liverpool came in and they said, either you sell us Isak or we buy Ekitike, and they bought Ekitike, and you were like, okay, it's done. And then all of a sudden it was Isak himself who refused to go on the tour and started the strike. By the way, ironically, the manager of Sweden that has now just been sacked was the one who gave him that advice, apparently. So that's why I never gave him the leeway because he missed all these games. He, in fact, was a Newcastle player officially when Newcastle played against Liverpool. I'm not giving Liverpool or Isak an out on this. You should have been training on your own. You should have been gaining match fitness. Or you should have been a good boy playing for Newcastle during the preseason while stuff was going on and trying to angle your move in a different way. Because behind the scenes, you could have had conversations. Newcastle bought Walter. Newcastle bought Wissa. They were clearly targeting strikers throughout the summer. They got rejected by Sesko. They got rejected by João Pedro. They got rejected by Ekitike. They were clearly making strides towards replacing him. It was going in that direction. But Isak continued to be on strike. He played a part in not gaining that match fitness. It's a difference with him and Gyökeres, where Gyökeres was given a promise by Sporting, and Sporting were just being hard asses at the negotiation table. And this was at the beginning of the preseason, so maybe it was not the first week of training. But both of those, but that was very clear to everybody that Gyökeres was on the market. Newcastle did not make it clear that Isak were on the market. That was clearly, in fact, the opposite. But in the words of Honest Slot, to come back full circle here, Alexander Isak no longer has excuses. His preseason is over. That's as much as I'll say, because obviously I've spoken on this topic for about 6 weeks now, if you remove the international break. Come on, Isak. Come on, wait. It started for me, by the way, from the moment he signed. Like, you spent 130 million pounds, I expect you to hit the ground running. Gyökeres is coming from a different league, a vastly different league. Isak apparently was a better player because he's been doing it in the Prem, although Gyökeres has got a better goal-scoring record overall. But now, on to Victor Gyökeres, his manager, my manager, Mikel Arteta. He was asked about a variety of different questions about Victor Gyökeres. And this is what he had to say when asked about, him and his goal shot. Because, yeah, at the same time, Gyökeres, and I've heard it from my own fan base, that he's been under pressure. Like, I've been on with Negative Dan, I've been on with Positive Dan. Both of them were saying, like, look, we're winning, but if you're not the one who's making the difference to winning, being games like Fulham this weekend. We even used West Ham, but we won anyway. But if we're still dropping points and you haven't scored, then all of a sudden we've got issues. And you can point to, he's only got 3 games in his first 8 matches. I think we're even, wait. Oh my God. I'll let Ash get in my head. For all the guys who know who Ash is. He said 8 matches. What is he counting? By the way, Champions League, we had 2. We've played 2 matches. And then EFL Cup, that's 3 plus 7. We played 7 matches in the Premier League, not 8. God. He's actually played 10 game matches overall with 3 goals. So about 30% conversion rate per match. So 0.3 goals a game in all competitions. That's very low compared to what he was doing in Sporting, and I granted. But Arteta said something very, very interesting here, and I'm going to play it, in terms of what he expected Victor Gyökeres and how he views it when they first sat down to speak right before, when they were talking about signing him.
Before the international break, it was a bit of a tough time for Victor Gyökeres, having scored in 6 games. I know you're appreciative of the work that he was doing for his teammates. He didn't score for Sweden in the 2 matches. Do you have to pick him up at this point to lift his confidence, or do you think he'll be okay?
Yes, but I mean, he brings so much to the team. And watching the games back, I'm very pleased with what he's giving to the team. I told him before the first meeting, I said, the 9 that I want is a 9 that when he doesn't score for 6 or 8 games, he can handle that. If not, you have to go somewhere else because the pressure is gone, the expectation is going to be there. So if you put the number 9 shirt for Arsenal, you have to be able to say, okay, 6 games, don't score. Am I a different player? I start to act in a different way. I want much more of the same of what he's doing. And yeah, once we have those opportunities, put them. I'm sure it's going to happen.
Tom, football on it?
This might be my Arsenal bias coming here, but I feel like Mikel Arteta has handled his situation with Gyökeres. The answer he gave didn't give the haters what they wanted. So what Arteta was telling Gyökeres is, A, coming to play at Arsenal comes with a lot of pressure, especially being the 9 that everybody is expecting to make the difference. And he said, you know, you're coming to play at Arsenal, this is not Sporting. And by the way, one thing he didn't include here is the fact that there are other players at Arsenal who can score goals. We've been scoring goals without a striker. We've been finishing second without a striker. You talk about all across this team. You got Saka's, you got Eze's, you got Trossard's, Martinelli's, Odegaard's, Rice's, Gabriel scores from the head. Like, you got so many avenues to goal. Excuse me if I missed some. I mean, Havertz, of course, who will be back eventually soon as well. Javier Jesus. Arsenal can get goals from many places. So we're not relying on him as much as people like to say for him to score every single week. This is not Sporting Lisbon. So the message he said to him is like, look, you're coming to Arsenal, and there are going to be periods here where you might go 6 matches without scoring, and you need to be okay with that. As long as you're offering other things to the team, because if you're coming to me and knocking on my door about not being in the positions to score goals and blah 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 blah, even though there are many other people who are scoring, if it's making about your goal scoring record versus the team's goal scoring record, this isn't the right place for you. If you can't handle the pressure of going goalless and at a football club at Arsenal, this isn't the right place for you. So what he's telling me as well, by the way, is that Victor Gyökeres is totally okay. Mentally, he's in the right place here. And as Arteta said, he is a great player. Eventually, he's going to find periods of times in the season where he's going to be firing. There are going to be times this season. It might that's the story of a season. So right now we'd be talking about Gyökeres. He hasn't scored and that's, by the way, same goes for Isak. But we could be talking about Gyökeres hasn't scored for 6 matches in this period of time. But then there's another period of time, maybe 2, 3, even a month, maybe starting next week. You don't know when, where Gyökeres is on fire. He's scoring hat tricks and all game, and the narrative is like, oh my God, this guy is just amazing. He's unstoppable. What a great striker. And then he'll go on a drought again. And then all of a sudden, it's like, what have you done for me lately? We're just in a point of the season where he hasn't scored for a while. And I think both of their situations have started to come together. And you see it coming full circle when they're playing together for Sweden. And that's what it is. But you know what? To further the debate, though, on Victor Gyökeres, or further the conversation with Victor Gyökeres, Mikel Arteta had more to say in regards to Victor and how he sees his role and how he sees how Victor has been performing at Arsenal instead, and how because for all the fans who are just talking about their displeasure, the manager obviously has a different point of view, and this is who Gyökeres answers to. So let's listen quietly to Mikel Arteta.
Simon Standard.
Mikel, just on Victor,
Yeah.
you talk about his sort of mentality. Is that something when you're scouting a player that you can find out about, and how did you go about that with Victor to know he was someone who could handle the pressure of doing that for us?
Going back in his history as well with Victor, it's a very different one. The beginning and when he wasn't even playing much, and then how he evolved his career. Then in the last year, very difficult to find a gap of that because I think you score in every single match almost. But just preparing something, the context is going to change. It's part of football. You see the history of the number 9s. You're gonna have moments like that. Hopefully, it's through playing, not that you don't even have the option to play and you are injured. So his robustness is something really good. I'm really happy with him. Full confidence, and when you look at him every single day, how much he wants it. That's exactly what you expect.
And obviously on the outside, when you judge a striker, everyone looks at the goals. But when you judge Victor's performance, do you look at different things?
Well, the first thing is that's gonna give you something extra. Victor adds so many things that probably are not that noticeable, but as well it creates environment and a space and solutions to a lot of the players around him. And with the talent that we have in the team, I'm sure that everybody, him included, will benefit from that.
So there you have it. Look, Arteta himself, and this is kind of what we've been trying to kind of explain to people on the various different shows. Myself. Let's talk about me. What I've been trying to explain on many different shows. The impact of having a Gyökeres in the team is different than having a Kai Havertz in the team. The impact about having a guy who people have to be aware of that has the ability to score so many goals that can kill you. That is that the defenses need to plan for Gyökeres. They need to keep accountable. If they all of a sudden managers go, Gyökeres hasn't scored for 6 weeks, he's not my worry. Let's focus on Bukayo Saka. And all of a sudden the double team comes on Bukayo Saka, or the double team comes on Eberechi Eze, or the double team comes on Leandro Trossard. But I mean, it won't. It would be Saka, let's be honest. But if those were to occur, you're leaving Gyökeres and acres of space. You're going to sleep on this guy. He's gonna score goals. He just is. So yeah, he might not be eating, but you know what it does? It takes the pressure, it takes the extra defenders off of Bukayo Saka, off of Eberechi Eze, just as an example. Kai Havertz does other things in the game. He brings other players into play, but teams aren't as worried about Kai Havertz killing you. So we're back to the issue here of teams trying to make Saka's life a living hell. What Arteta has outlined to you, which is kind of what I felt, even when we signed him, and I said it, you can go back, watch it on Terry's show of the day that we signed Gyökeres, the impact of Gyökeres beyond the scoring the goals, which is he takes the pressure off of his teammates. He adds a different threat the defenders need to worry about. And for that, Arteta is happy. And as he said again, the goals will come eventually. But again, as we can take it back full circle to Isak and Gyökeres, right? And then to wrap up this part. This is why you're on the under pressure list, right? This is an uplifting list. We're here to uplift. Isak, are you going to be here next week? Because this is had enough. And Victor, I gotta say, even myself, and I said it on the Fire Them Cannons podcast, it's now time to deliver. I need you to start to delivering the goals. Same with Isak. What has said to Isak what I've said to Gyökeres. Playtime's over now. It's time to score goals. I'm hoping for a fruitful, honestly, if you really look at my under pressure list and who's on it, I'm hoping for a fruitful under pressure list this weekend, where you see the magic of the list. And speaking of another guy, and we won't go too much on it in terms of on this list, but let's talk about the other guy. And of course, he hasn't earned his way off of it either. And that's the other £116.5 million signing from Bayer Leverkusen to Liverpool, Florian Wirtz. And, you know, me and Cal spoke about this 2 weeks ago when we were on this show, and nothing has changed since then. Another ghost performance against Chelsea. And I don't count international stuff, but that's not what's important to me. But I just want to go Let's go to SofaScore for a second. I use this like this is, I want to use this to outline. Let's go back to the screen sharing here to outline for inverts. I'm not going to play any manager clips because nothing has necessarily been spoken about in the public on this. But let's head to the SofaScore. Okay, this season, by the way, forget about the position maps and started like that. Let's take a look at their average SofaScore ratings, the player of the match rating. Now, 6.7 against Bournemouth, 6.2 against Newcastle. Now, his best performance of the season, I would agree, was against us. And that was, by the way, why I took him initially off the list, because I thought, you know, he started to show you promise of the type of player that he is. And then again, 5.9, his worst outing against Burnley, 6.5 against Everton, 6.5 against Palace, 6.3 against Chelsea. That was his match rating with an average of 6.49. Now, do you want, let's switch to what they bought. I want to look at the Bundesliga from last season, right? His average player rating was 7.68. So he's like way off the boil here. And now we're back to here. Again, 0 GA still as a Liverpool player this season. 0 GA. No goals, no assists. And I remember when we were discussing this and Hassan was saying, oh, I need at least, how many GA did you say? Like 20 GA or something from this season? Bro, we're almost a quarter way in the season. You're at 0. He's got a lot to catch up on. Again, I'm going to be harsh on these Liverpool players, not necessarily because, like with Liverpool players, whether they're on my list or not, has got nothing to do with the title race. I'm just being quite frank. It's about players being. I was being told that these guys would change everything, that Liverpool would run away with the league, and at the moment they're second. They're second in the league behind Arsenal. Who said that? That's a great segue, by the way, to this, which is. You're gonna be crazy. I'm actually gonna start this off again with. I'm gonna start this off with actually a press conference note. So here we go. This was. So let's do begin.
Yeah.
Hi.
Since the last round of fixtures, Arsenal have now been installed as the favourites by the bookmakers, something in the Premier League. Do you think that's an accurate representation of how things stand at the moment?
I don't know. Then we have to ask ourselves how accurate it was the one 4 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago. So we don't know. I'm sure a result or two will change that in an even better percentage for us or worse, depending on what happens. Let's focus on what we can control.
Do you think it's possible to stay at the top to the end of the season, or do you think because of the strength of other teams that the league will change throughout the...
It is possible if we continue to win a lot of football matches. I'm sure we will be there.
All right. And that is now, you're going to be like, what? Arsenal? You put your Arsenal team at the top of, on the under pressure list? Right. You put Arsenal on the under pressure list. Why? They're top of the league. They're playing than everybody else. This doesn't fit into your narrative. So, as you can see, Arteta was asked the question. Arsenal have now been installed as the favorites for the league. And I'm going to go re-quote this because I have it on my screen here. The exact quotes that are that. So it was that. So yeah, it was. Yeah, like now that we're favorites to league, what type of pressure does that add onto Arsenal? And you know, my thing here is I think it's correct. I think Arsenal, we've got a tremendous opportunity here, which is why I'm putting the pressure on us to show that we're different this year than every other year. I can go ahead and I can say as much as I want to that we're going to be different, but it's time for Arsenal as a football club to show that they are different, to embrace that favorites tag instead of being afraid of it. Because I feel like a lot of teams, like Liverpool fans, are always like, no, whoa, we're not favorites. And it's not just that. Any other team, they can go big up their team and go, oh, well, and then we turn around and say, hey, well, then you should be expecting the challenge for the title, yeah? And they go, whoa, that's a bit too much. Whoa, title pressure, no way. And this is more about Arsenal managing the pressure of expectancy rather than being under pressure to perform because they have been underperforming and that they need to turn anything around. Arsenal now are the favorites, and I want them to stay as the favorites. I'm just going to be honest. I want Arsenal to be the favorites and to use that and use it as fuel and use that in your behavior. Go out against Fulham and be like, yeah, we're the favorites. We want to win this league. We should be winning this league. Let's go and do what it takes to do that. Because Fulham, last 2 years, we have come out without a win. We lost to them 2 seasons ago, and last season we drew. Crystal Palace at home is our matchup next week. We drew them with them last year. The other matchup after that, Brighton, we drew with them at home as well. And then we got Sunderland, newly promoted team away from home. But those are 4 games that if you're the champion, regardless of what your past results are, you need to go and win. Because Liverpool have got Man United this week. Liverpool have got Man City on the last week before the break. And there's some other trickier ones in there as well. City also have got trickier ones. The fact is the two of them play each other. Now Arsenal are top. Can we continue, now that we are the hunted, to keep that form up? To not let that weigh us down? That's the end of the day. What everybody's trying to say is Arsenal don't have the mentality. They don't have the bottle to deal with the pressure of wanting to win it all. That end of the day is what we're talking about here. Like Arsenal's being under pressure to win it all, and how instead we can deal with that. And again, I'm going to go back to the press conference from the manager one more time, because he was asked a question which is very interesting, which brings us into this sort of topic, which is if he prefers to be top and having the pressure, or be the chasers and put the pressure on the other team. Let's take a listen to what Mikel Arteta had to say here.
I know it's only Matchweek 8 that we're going into, but we look back at the last few seasons, you've had experience of being chased and doing the chasing. You're top of the table. Which do you prefer?
I prefer to win every game, and the only thing that we can do is to perform really well on Saturday and win the game. As you said, it's super early. It's not the moment to start looking at that. It's much more the moment now to look at performances, to look at ways that we can sustain certain things that we're doing and improve others, and that's the only way. And that increase the chances to win in matches when it comes to March and April, to be in the best possible position. And then when you ask me that question, I will tell you for sure I want to be at the top.
And what is it that you...
There you have it. So Mikel Arteta has said, I want to be at the top. That's the attitude that that's the answer I wanted to hear him give. And that's exactly what it is. Now, interesting, one more thing on this topic, and then we'll close out the video. I want to share a clip from Paul Merson that I found that he was talking about, how Arsenal, how hard of a fixtures we've had in the beginning of the games, and how he wants to see how Arsenal could use that as a platform and not waste this opportunity and go on a run here and really take control of this league?
Arsenal have had probably one of the hardest starts in Premier League history. They're sitting top of the league. Now they've got to make it pay.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, you look at last year, right, in comparison, out of 12 points, Arsenal gained 2 points in this period. Liverpool took 10, so it was huge in terms of the title race. Do you think, Quinton, do you agree that this is Arsenal's chance to really kind of push forward and make a marker?
Well, it's been Arsenal's thing the last couple of seasons. They've been doing well, they've been pushing, they've been getting second, and I'm sure with every manager you have like blocks of the season, and I'm sure Arteta will be looking at this 4 games coming up, looking at the teams playing and set the target for the team and go, look, we can win these 4 games. Yeah. And it's there for them now. It's not like teams that you're playing United, you're playing tough teams. There's teams they can beat, and no disrespect to those teams, but Arsenal with the quality they have now, they should be winning those games.
I agree. I absolutely agree, and that's sort of the point that I'm stating here, and why Arsenal's under pressure. I want us to win this Premier League, and we need to do things differently now than we did in the previous years. There are doubters. Everyone, like even Terry goes, you know, I still have Liverpool as my marginal favorites because Arsenal have yet proven to me that they can go out and they can win the T-shirt. You know, when we've had opportunities like this in the past, we've blown it. We've blown it from the leading positions. In fact, the last time Arsenal were top of the league, going into a match week, was famously when we went to play Aston Villa. What happened that day? We lost 2-0 at home against Villa. Now it's time. These 4, I don't care who the opponent is now. We have had the hardest schedule. I've said it on every single show, everywhere. We have the hardest schedule. Arsenal deserve to be the league. Hardest schedule, deepest squad, blah, blah, blah. Injuries, it hasn't mattered. All of the points, right? But if Arsenal don't go and capitalize off these next 4 games, and let's say we go to the next international break and we're not top, I don't even have words for that, because I don't want to see it happen. And I'll address that, I guess, if it were to happen. But I want to put Arsenal under pressure to go out and show that we are champions. And that, my friends, is the under pressure list for this week. It was a bit longer than normal because I wanted to do something different. I wanted to add in a lot more multimedia. Let me guys know what you guys think. By the way, do you agree with some of my takes? Do you agree with who is on the list, who's under pressure? Now, for all those who are saying, hey, Liverpool's under pressure this week against Manchester United, I've sort of featured 2 Liverpool players, and I will say that as my outgoing thing. Obviously, they've lost 3 matches in a row, and they need to win against Manchester United, but we will touch on that in my next video before this weekend, which is, of course, upset alert. So, which is going to be a bit different this week, just a bit of a spoiler. Anyway, guys, make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing. Again, hit the QR code to my right for you to subscribe to Fire Them Cannons podcast, especially for all the gooners out there. Man, for all you guys don't know, people like me and Cal, some of the new guys on the terrace, are very much in demand. There are literally fights between some of the largest channels to get us on with them. But me and Cal have our own show. So we get that content. We're making that content. You get to see the content that everybody else is trying to gain possession of, which Terry has for the most part, and I have here in Hotsport, and me and Cal have. Cal has on his own channel. So guys, it's good stuff, right? Hit the QR code, subscribe to Fire Them Cannons, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Until now.